Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show here on the UK Health Radio Network, and I'm your host, Atiq Ahmed Bhatti. As always, I hope you've had a pleasant week, and a very comfortable week in fact. Now, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Christina Chambreau, who is an internationally renowned homeopathic veterinarian since 1982. She's also a speaker, author, and is on the faculty of Holistic Actions, which empowers pet parents, and she's joining me all the way from Florida in the United States. Christina, absolute joy and delight to have you on the show. Thank you so much. It's brilliant.
Well, thank you, because the key is getting the word out. And so the more, people listening to this show can then tell others who will listen to the show, and we'll all start improving health, not just for ourselves, not just for our animals, but homeopathy improves health for the planet as well. So it's something when I was in conventional veterinary school, I had no idea about.
Well, and that all changed for the better, I must say.
It did. So I started working in a vet clinic when I was 11 years old, and ended up going to veterinary school because our government finally started enforcing Title IX, which said, if you discriminate against women or other people, you lose your money. And so then the veterinary school enrollment jumped from 5 or 10% women to 50 to 60% women, and now it's 90% women. But wow. I was completely conventional. Didn't know, I had done a little acupuncture while I was in vet school, but I just was doing the usual thing. And then a client came in to just have blood drawn and wanted it sent to her homeopathic veterinarian. And I went, what's homeopathy? And she'd been using it as a psychotherapist very successfully for about a decade. Now, this was in 1982. So this is a long time ago. And that veterinarian, who was fairly local, maybe a couple of hours away, had taken the first course offered by the wonderful veterinarian from the UK, Dr. George MacLeod. And it was part of the National Center for Homeopathy Summer School. And he did not understand homeopathy at all. He just knew remedies for conditions, because that was sort of what was being taught at the moment. And he sent me Cantharis and Urtica urins and said, this will help cats with bladder problems. Period. That's all I had. These 2 little square bottles from the Washington Homeopathic Pharmacy in Bethesda, Maryland, with little sugar pellets in it. And I set it on the shelf in the main clinic. And 3 months later, my boss was talking to a client whose cat had been on antibiotics for urinary problems for 3 years. And they were beginning to talk about having to euthanize the cat because there were complications and didn't like the pills, whatever. And I said, I should have brought a bottle with me. I said, Neil, Dave Taman suggests this. Shall we try it? And he said, sure, ask her. So I did. People complain that homeopathy is purely placebo. And they say even with animals, it's placebo because the owner knows about it and believes in it. Well, I walked in with this little funny looking bottle and said, would you like to try homeopathy? A local veterinarian feels it would help. And she said, sure, I'll do anything. What's homeopathy? And I went, I don't know. So there was no placebo effect. I probably prescribed very allopathically. I don't remember. I probably said, crush 2 of these pellets twice a day, or maybe it was give 1 in the morning and 1 at night for 2 weeks. Well, that cat was off antibiotics for the next 9 months that I was at the practice. I didn't understand cure, palliation, and suppression, but I would assume, given that 9 months and the cat was fine, that it was really cure or moving towards a cure, because palliation would have come back in for more bladder, suppression would have been ill in other ways. So that was my hook from the sky that said, learn this, Christina. So I started studying with the National Center for Homeopathy. Richard Pitcairn, a veterinarian in the US, was just starting to learn homeopathy and teach it. And then I studied with Paul Herscu up in Massachusetts and started speaking. So I've been speaking and teaching all around the world ever since about 1987, and prescribed until 6 years ago remotely for people, because people wanted to know, people who love homeopathy wanted their animals treated with homeopathy. And so that's what I did for decades. And even now, very few people think about homeopathy, even though it's written up in many of the holistic journals, the holistic pet journals, holistic veterinary journals. It's not something they jump to right away. However, when offered, they love it. And the results, of course, are phenomenal.
I wanted to ask you, using those 2 remedies for that cat, and being a qualified veterinarian, and obviously the mindset can be very challenging at times. Well, the mindset can be very fixed at times when you're looking at it from a medical point of view. What went through your mind, or did you have to repeat that with different remedies on different animals for you to say, do you know what, this is something really profound?
I am not a person, I'm not a deep scientific thinker. I still don't know how I got through veterinary school. Angels wanted me to, I guess, is all I can say. And so when I saw that brilliant result in a cat, all I could say is, I need to learn more about this. I didn't question it 1 iota. And I would say that the 3 ways people veterinarians come to using homeopathy or other holistic approaches is, number 1, a client comes to them over and over again saying, I'm doing this, and they go, wow, the animal's a lot better. Number 2, somebody in their family becomes ill and conventional medicine doesn't work, or for their own self, they become ill and conventional medicine doesn't work. And then they explore other modalities. And that it's that personal experience that seems to make a big difference, for sure.
It's amazing, isn't it, that nowadays we often hear, homeopathy. Well, in the olden days, should I say, we used to hear homeopathy and humans, and now we're talking about not just animals. That's something almost in the past now, because so many people are using homeopathy for animals. But we've gone so much further now into agriculture and plants and everything else, of course. And it's quite interesting, because I was speaking to Pat Ahern from Cork. He's referred to as AKA the homeopath farmer, and he's doing tremendously well, as is Tracy Simpson in New Zealand, who's also a dairy farmer. And they've been using homeopathy on their dairy cows for mastitis and so much more. But they have also moved into crops and agriculture in general. It's just amazing, isn't it, that transition from where one can start and where one ends up, or should I say, the journey so far. I can't say that's where they've ended up, because it's going to open so many other possibilities. And I was just speaking to Elizabeth Adalian, who's been on the Homeopathy Health Show previously. She's coming on soon. And she's talking about the work with a professor to do with the climate itself and homeopathy and how it can help. So the magnitude is just amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's homeopathy is for everything that you would need help with as far as health and well-being.
It is. It is. And it also, if you're using homeopathy, it keeps you away from using toxic things, whether it's glyphosate in the soil, antibiotics in the people and the animals. And it's much lighter on the planet when one bee can give its life for 100 years worth of apis presentation. Now, we have to remember that treating animals is not something new. I don't know about the history of treating plants, but Hahnemann himself treated animals. So it goes all the way back. And Hecla lava was actually discovered and worked up by a veterinarian. So we have been using this for a long time, but it is now time to move it forward, which is why I'm so glad that there's another movie coming out that hopefully will spread the word all around about homeopathy, and particularly with the Dr. Pitcairn will be on it. And so he'll be speaking about homeopathy for animals. But there are a lot of people who have had personal experiences, and that's what had them become doctors of homeopathy for people. So I really think it's important to make a distinction with using homeopathic medicines and treating an animal or a person or a farm homeopathically. So I lectured for Weston Price a few decades ago about taking the case of your farm homeopathically and taking the case, so that's plants and soil. Taking the case of an animal is very much like taking the case of an infant. Neither one can speak. So you're relying on testing for modalities. You can't say to them, bow wow, does your ear feel better if I do a hot compress on it or a cold compress? You have to test it. Same thing as you would with an infant. And so people buy combination homeopathic medicines to treat children with ear infections, colic, horses with colic, itchy dogs. And then so there's really three parts. And then, so we have combination remedies for specific conditions, but we also have remedies that have a history of theoretically being good for conditions. So dogs fed kibble, dogs fed commercial dog foods, and cats as well will often develop really bad tartar. And so Frigeria has been known as a remedy that gets rid of tartar. Or people don't want to give vaccines to their animals, so they give nosodes instead. And I really want people, most importantly, to learn the principles of homeopathy, that we have one underlying energy field imbalance, vital force, we call it. And when that gets pushed out of balance by something, anything, emotional state of the owners will often trigger the animal's vital force to be off balance, and then it produces symptoms. Now, if you merely treat the symptoms with drugs, or sometimes even when you just treat with a combination, or you treat with a single remedy, just looking at that one symptom, it may go away, but we don't see the overall long-term health improvement. It's like testing the soil and giving one remedy or one supplement to the soil, and not stepping back and seeing that we have multiple microclimates going on, and each one may need something different, or the whole place may need a different way. So the key is all the symptoms currently and past indicate the shape of the vital force. And when you do that, and anybody can learn to do this, it doesn't take super training. Pay attention to all of the symptoms. And then whoever you're working with as a homeopath, veterinarian, medical doctor, soil prescriber, or trying things yourself, you then pay attention to all of the symptoms, not just the one you're worried about today. Do they all slowly get better? And does the animal feel better overall? At Holistic Actions, Jeff Feynman calls it BEAM: behavior, energy, appetite, and mood. If those are getting better, whatever decisions you've made are moving along the right track. And If not, if the symptom goes away and nothing else improves, and then the symptom comes back again, you're just temporarily helping, whether it's a homeopathic medicine, a drug, an herb, a flower essence, whatever you're doing, you're only temporarily helping. And that's not necessarily bad, but you want more. You want really to go for the cure. And you want that overall feeling better. Even worse is if you give a medicine and the symptom goes away and then worse symptoms appear. And that's suppression. And that often happens. You give steroids and the itch goes away, and a few months later, they develop liver problems. Or you give the wrong remedy. I have a perfect example of that. A client called and she had a dog who'd been itching for 3 years. Off and on, hadn't done a ton of, I don't know that they'd done steroids, maybe Benadryl, but 3 years. So I carefully took all the symptoms, took the case, figured the best remedy, had her give the remedy and call back in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, her first words were, "Dr. Chambreau, you're a miracle worker." So what was my reaction? Oops. I didn't say that to her, but in my mind, I went, oops. Well, there could be a miracle. Sometimes remedies fix everything right away. But I carefully questioned her and discovered that the itching stopped within half an hour of giving the medicine, the homeopathic medicine. But within a week or so, the dog started biting the children and being very crabby. So that was suppression. The homeopathic medicine I gave pushed the energy field into a deeper disease, a deeper weakness. I represcribed, including the behavior and the skin. The behavior cleared up right away because it was a new symptom. And over the next month or two, the skin slowly, steadily improved. And the dog went on to live to be 20 years old. It was a small dog. So that's what we're looking for. So when you are doing homeopathy or when you're working with a homeopath, if you're not moving towards cure, you're not seeing general improvements or you're seeing worsening, stop. Ask a question. Are we moving in the right direction? Maybe you just don't understand it. And that's why 7 years ago, I stopped being the veterinary homeopath. There were enough other phone consulting homeopaths, both in the UK, in Europe, in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, all over the world. And we can consult all over the world. So I no longer needed to be the one doing it. And what I love doing is helping people figure out how their animals are responding. I wanted to help people get started on the right track and match them up with the treatments that might be the best. Their dog might need a chiropractor and not a homeopath. Maybe they love acupuncture and they have a great acupuncturist near them. I'm not going to send them to a homeopath at that point. Let them start with Chinese medicine. However, I will teach them what I just went over. Evaluation of response. Is it cure, palliation, or suppression? Because often acupuncture does tend to more palliate, not always if it's done right. But that combination, there's no one right answer.
You know, you said something quite interesting, which was to do with how animals can play off how their owners are and they have their emotions. And that's so important, isn't it? Because cats and dogs are an example. If the owner is upset or anxious, the animal, of course, is going to respond accordingly. And they can only do so much. Of course, aptly, they can't speak, as you said, and through their actions, they can show care and love. But of course, it affects the animal. And ultimately, with everything that you've said is observe your animal, observe your pet or animal, whichever scenario you're in, and then take a case, because it's so important to know the type of character profile, the psyche. Each cat is different, each dog is different, each cow is different. They're not all the same. Yes, they look the same, perhaps, possibly even, you could say, as far as cows, but technically they're not, And it's so important, isn't it? Observation and knowing your animal. I mean, it's fine keeping an animal, actually, and I know we're going off tangent, but it's fine keeping an animal. If you don't even know them and you just feed them once a day, well, that's, there has to be a relationship there, especially, I'll give you an example, actually. Tracy Simpson in New Zealand was talking about her cattle, and the story was something to do with the fact they seemed to be traumatized at night. And I think it was Ignatia was the remedy that was given to the one cow that was actually suffering because everybody else was tense. And once that cow went quiet with Ignatia, because it worked so profoundly, all the animals were at peace. And that's amazing, because they're obviously going off the vibes of each other, aren't they? And it's an energy field, literally. It is what it is, right?
Well, they've done measurements of that. Like in heart math, they actually have measured how far your effect is. And we know that the energy of treatments can happen across the world. We can actually send the thought of the right homeopathic medicine, and sometimes that will work. Sometimes you're in a pinch and that's all you have, and you can do that. And I've seen that work with animals. But to continue with what you were pointing on to, when animals are really ill, especially with cancer, and over 50% of dogs get cancer. I mean, it's the numbers are humongous, and cats a lot as well, because of poor diet, too many vaccines, bad water. Here in the U.S., glyphosate and other toxicities in the food, and our thoughts. When our animals get really ill with cancer, Cushing's, diabetes, some of these really serious diseases, we worry. We spend more of our time worrying about how soon they're going to die, and if we can afford their treatments, and what's going on, and are they up, how are they, than we do enjoying every minute with them. And what are they doing? Mostly they're trying to enjoy every moment of life. Sure, they may hurt at some point, but they don't go, oh, I'm going to hurt forever. That's suffering. People do that. Animals don't do, babies don't do that. Babies hurt and they cry, and then the cry is over. You distract them and the cry is over. So I talk about having a worry box in your brain. And anytime you have a worry, you put it in the worry box. And then once a day, if your animals are ill, you go to that worry box and you figure out your next steps and evaluate the response and do the thinking. The rest of the time, enjoy being with your animal. At Holistic Actions, we talk about doing the happiness dance. And that is literally, if you have a moribund animal just lying there, dance around the animal and observe them, see how they respond. If they go, oh, then calm it down and don't be quite as active. But find out what makes each animal happy and spend the time, whether you have a day or whether you have multiple years, spend time enjoying your animals. And that is really the key. I think one of the biggest obstacles to cure and to longevity and health is people worrying and not being happy. And that goes around to their animals, as you said, even animal to animal, cow to cow. That definitely shows up that way. And it shows up with plants. How often have you heard, talk to your plants? Why do we do that? It's to make them feel better, right?
It's, going back to this energy and this conversation thread, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if somebody wants an example, then if someone's at a dinner table and there's only one person who's feeling very down, it brings the energy down of everybody else. And that enjoyment is not there. And yet, they say, isn't it, you can cut the air with a knife, right? Which means the tension or the anxiety or just that feeling, that sensation. And that's such a good example for those who perhaps may not be able to put the way that homeopathy works into words as such, because if you can't measure tension, but you can cut the ear with a knife because you can feel it, then of course animals are going to feel it. In fact, they're going to feel it much more because their focus is very much on the, as far as sort of domesticated animals, let's say, is very much upon the owner and their relationship with the owner. And there's a real strong connection there. Feeling down, animal will feel down. Feeling happy, animal will feel happy. Laughing, animal feels protected and safe and comforted. It feels it's a good environment. An environment where, God forbid, there's arguments or things are being broken. The animal has fear and anxiety. What's going to happen? There's a level of mistrust because he doesn't know how the human's going to react. And all of that goes into the character profile, doesn't it? And what you've been saying about, remedies and observing, and it's fascinating.
Well, I will say, though, that you have to remember that every animal is unique, and many of them don't care what the owners are thinking. Often until they're ill, and then they have that tighter bond because the owner is now spending so much time worrying about them. But in the average day-to-day life, some pay attention and some don't. And sometimes it depends on how many animals in the house. When I was speaking, I think it was at Liga in California decades ago, a couple who were homeopaths came up to me and said, "Could I ask you a question about our cats?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "We have 2 cats and they're about 2 years old now. And they just totally ignore us. They play with themselves and we want them to play with us." And I said, "Well, first question you always ask, well, tell me about your day and tell me about what you do with them." "Well, we work 6 days a week. We get up at 5 in the morning and we meditate. We try to meditate with them, but they don't necessarily want that. And then we come home at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night and we feed them and we feed ourselves and go to bed. And then on Sunday, we're home all day, and that's when we want them to play with us." Is it any surprise? I said, they don't need a homeopathic medicine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're acting totally appropriately for the circumstances with which they're living in. Now, there could be other animals in that same circumstance who, as soon as the owners come home, they're just all over them. "Where did you go when you left me? And oh my goodness." So each animal is unique and we have to observe, but we have to be careful to always step back and look at the whole circumstance that's going on. And the same thing is true with, the same thing is true with horses. Sometimes horses, I had one horse who, every time he did it, he loved doing these endurance rides, it seemed, these 50-mile rides. He was like up for it and did it, but he got sick after every endurance ride. And then when we looked at his, from a Chinese medicine perspective, his sort of psychological profile, he was a horse that liked quiet. And he liked short bursts of energy, not long ones. And so when they started doing barrel racing with him, he never got sick because he got to do a quick performance instead of a all-day 50-mile endurance kind of ride. There are dogs who love to hike, and there are dogs who don't love to hike with you or run with you. So it really is so key that we observe our animals. And one of the key things to observe that is also an obstacle to cure. So with animals, one of the big obstacles to cure is food. How would people feel if their GP said to them, "I want you to eat this specially formulated cereal twice a day and never touch any other food"? Is that healthy? I mean, if you have a feeding tube, getting Ensure every day will keep you alive. And yet that's what we're doing with our dogs and cats. We're feeding them the same thing twice a day. And then people go, "Well, I think commercial food's not good. I'm going to feed a raw food diet, or I'm going to make my own." And then they do the same thing. They make the same recipe twice a day for the rest of the animal's life. Well, as a homeopath, I'm missing a chunk of information. if instead you offer your animals every kind of food you're eating and you record, maybe in a journal, what they love and what they don't love, then the homeopath, yourself or a professional, will have all these extra clues. Now you have to be careful. If you have a cat or a dog that loves eating meat, are you going to use desires meat as a key important symptom? What do you think?
No.
No, because dogs and cats ought to eat meat. But if you have a cat, like one of my clients, every time her cat was sick, it craved cauliflower and broccoli.
Interesting.
That's a characteristic symptom. So by tracking what foods they love and don't love, that can actually help you, regardless of the condition you're treating. It can help you characterize who is this individual animal, number one. And number two, by feeding a wide variety of foods, you're feeding different amino acid profiles, different vitamins, different minerals. So the bottom line is animals of all sorts need to be fed a species-appropriate diet. And that includes a lot of variety, whether they're dogs, cats, horses, cows, birds. You need to do the research and find out on that. That's really important. And then, regardless of the health of your animals, if you want your animals and your plants and your family to be healthy, I strongly encourage everybody to learn some energy healing method: meditation, qigong, Reiki, energy medicine. There are so many different ones. And I have an article on my I have two articles actually on my website about that. Easy ones to learn and more difficult ones that maybe cost more, like electromagnetic mats that you lie on and things like that. Because that way, if you do that every day with your animals, or allow them to be with you when you're doing that, you're going to prevent illnesses. And that's the best. And then have some books on hand, have some resources on hand, so that if your animal gets ill, you have something to turn to. If you just go to the internet, you're going to give this, give that, give this, give that. You're not getting a well-rounded perspective of what to give. There are some good sites that will help you with that. So I recommend Don Hamilton's Homeopathic Care of Cats and Dogs, even for veterinarians who are beginning in this. And definitely for homeopaths treating humans who also want to treat some animals, I recommend they have this book. And for people sort of brand new to this, Dr. Wendy Jensen wrote a great book. I always forget the name of it. Practical Handbook of Veterinary Homeopathy. And she walks you through what she does when she's treating an animal: case taking, repetirization, case analysis, selection of the remedy, evaluation of response, with lots of examples. And then Ed DeBuchler, who's a British veterinarian, I adore his book, Homeopathy, What to Expect, because it has 101 cured cases in it. Sometimes just a paragraph, sometimes a page or two, mostly one remedy, but definitely he's included ones where over a 2-year period, it took 5 remedies before they really cured. And it includes chickens, geese, dogs, cats, horses, cows, all different rabbits, all different species.
Very comprehensive.
So that book is not about learning homeopathy. That book is about inspiring you, and it's about giving you hope. It's about having you want to do more, to learn more about homeopathy and to start using it with your animals. It's to help you find people who can help you treat your animals. And that's an important piece. So at Holistic Actions, which is a membership website that people access from around the world, we have a free page. So if you go to holisticactions.com/select, I wrote an article on finding and working with holistic veterinarians. And it includes, of course, a section on homeopathic veterinarians, the British Institute for Homeopathy, the International Veterinary Homeopathy, the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy, and others. But it also includes other modalities and overall organizations where you may find people that have learned homeopathy a different way, not going through those organizations, but still are very good. And the article talks about how to evaluate who you're working with. And so that's a free article. If you're new to holistic at all, or for animals, you haven't thought about, oh, I don't need to do what the conventional vet says. I don't need to vaccinate every year. We have also a free course that when you go to the website, you can click on a link and it takes you to the 101 Holistic Health course. So that talks about much of what we've been talking about today: happiness protocol, identifying who your animal is, different treatments you can use, and the value of symptoms, that they are not something to get rid of. There's something to be a clue to rebalance the energy field so the body naturally gets rid of the symptoms.
You are a powerhouse of knowledge. I love it.
Well, I've been doing it since 1980, I hope, or 82. I hope I'm a powerhouse of knowledge.
I can tell you're a very good teacher. Yes. I have a question for you now. As far as veterinary care is concerned in the US, very much so, alongside homeopathy, how is the landscape changing? Is it more to do with, at this moment, that more people need to be made aware, for example, of homeopathy and how it can help their animals? Or are you seeing this change? I mean, of course, there must be a gradual growth now of people accepting homeopathy, just like you had that many, many years ago. You had this experience with Cantharis and Urtica. Have you met and speak to other veterinarians who are really taking homeopathy seriously now?
Well, since so Dr. Pitcairn and myself and another veterinarian, Jana Rigas, in about 1990, early 90s, created the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy. And that was for initially US and Canada. And of course, we have people from around the world now that belong. So what I will, and we created training courses for veterinarians. We have started, two other veterinary practitioners have started another course, which is only a 5-month course. So we have an 18-month course and a 5-month course. And each one, both of them are equally classical homeopathy, teaching the principles, using the organon, following that. They're both equally good. And they just have different approaches of how to empower the students. There are some improvements, but among the veterinarians, not enough. The veterinary schools, by and large, do not like homeopathy. They love Chinese medicine. They're open to Chinese medicine.
Any specific reason for that?
Yeah, the proof of Chinese medicine more fits the conventional scientific proof. More importantly, and why I quit practicing as a vet and am more speaking to lay people, and empowering people to take the holistic approach through homeopathic principles. We need more and more people hearing about homeopathy, asking for homeopathy. The veterinarians who are doing virtual homeopathy are full. They're booked. They often can take on new people because they're healing the animals so quickly. But because animals heal, they respond so well to homeopathy. Many of them do. Not all.
They do. No, you're absolutely
not
right.
all.
I treat a number of horses, dogs, and cats, and the response is amazing. After a day, sometimes after 2 days, and the owners call back saying, "Oh yeah, they're absolutely fine." Here am I,
Yes.
worried and thinking, "Oh, let me know what's going on." They said, "Oh no, it's fine. We're just sorry, we've just been busy."
Yes.
The animal's absolutely fine, and it's amazing, isn't it, how well they respond? It's brilliant.
So that's why this show, and everybody listening here, if you don't have animals of your own, I bet you have friends who have animals. So please encourage them to look at those few books, and there are more books out there, to go on to the different websites about homeopathy that have cases about animals, to get them thinking, oh, okay, let me look into homeopathy. Because the more people we have asking for homeopathy, the more we will find practitioners of homeopathy. And the other thing I've been doing is teaching courses like the NE or the Naturopathic CE website. I've done courses for their summits on how to think homeopathically to treat animals if you're already a homeopath treating people. I've lectured for the LA School of Homeopathy a couple of times, done a weekend course for their students. I have lectures on the Homeopathic CE, and I lectured for years for the National Center for Homeopathy on animal homeopathy. So I'm working from all three sides, veterinarians and students. And I think this 5-month course will help the veterinary students get started, because 18 months was hard for them to work into their schedule. And so maybe that will help. We'll see. And homeopaths and people doing it themselves. But again, I want you to focus. If it's fine, if you have an acute problem, try a remedy. I prefer you to try a single remedy and not a combo. But if you want to try a combo because your friend said so, try it, but then pay attention to what happens. And so the final thing is, how do we pay attention? How do we remember? So when all my clients asked me to write a book, I didn't want to, but I wrote a healthy animals journal. You put a picture of your animal on the front, and then there's a good overview of what we've just talked about. You write a timeline of what's ever happened, and then you do a master symptom list. And the master symptom list starts with BEAM: energy, appetite, behaviors, and mood. And we evaluate early warning signs like cats vomiting, dogs needing a bath, things that we've come to accept are normal that are really part of the chronic disease. So when you make this master symptom list and record the treatments or lifestyle changes you make, then you record what changes in the blank pages. And I have an ebook for those of you who live abroad, who live outside the US, I should say. So I have a dog journal ebook, a cat journal ebook, and within this year, we'll have the horse journal ebook finished. But that's the way you track the symptoms. It's critically important. Write things down. And writing them on the calendar and on little pieces of paper doesn't always work very well.
I want to ask you about your, over and above everything that you're doing, which includes, of course, the international lectures and speaking and teaching and looking after animals and forming organizations which promote the use of homeopathy in veterinary care, authoring the many books. You do get some time to yourself. And
yes.
I know that recently, as we were planning this podcast recording, you mentioned that you were going away to do something very, very interesting. So do share.
I do so many interesting things. I had to think what you meant. But this Sunday,
for me, it would have been just one.
Yes.
Then.
For me, I'm going to be flying out Sunday the 7th to Oklahoma City, and a friend will pick me up in her RV, and we're going to Hugo, Oklahoma for the Elephant Sanctuary, and they're having a special solar eclipse viewing with the Elephants Day. So on the 8th, I'm going to be getting to see the solar eclipse and observe how all the animals act, but particularly the elephants. And the woman who's picking me up is a channeler and a medium. And she says she's already received a message from one elephant that the elephant is very excited that we're coming.
Now, this show goes out well after the eclipse. So, as mentioned to you offline, you must send me a recording with you in it saying, "Hey, Atik, here I am," and we'll include that in in the promo, because I think that's really, really important.
I will do that. And I'll say just briefly, elephants didn't do anything, or wow, elephants did all sorts of things.
It'd be nice. I think it'll be a nice take on things, Dr. Christina Chambreau, you are, as far as homeopathic veterinarians are concerned, a celebrity. So thank you so much. And thank you for obviously sharing the knowledge that you have. It's so, so important and so much needed. And I think, you're making progress in leaps and bounds. And for those that wish to get in touch, please do share your details. So
ChristinaChambreau.com, or you can go to, if you can't spell my name, myhealthyanimalz.com will probably get you there. That website disappears occasionally. And my email, and please feel free to email me, is let me do the other one, healthyanimals@aol.com. If you break it apart, it's healthyanimals@aol.com.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I like that. I like that play with the words.
A Californian told me that. I didn't see it, but they did.
That is actually really interesting. Okay.
So reach out to me for sure.
Christina, absolute joy to have you on. And no doubt we're going to be in touch and look forward to many, many great things. And
I look forward to being here again. We have many topics to talk about.
Absolutely. Every guest is a returning guest.
How do I give medicines to my animals, and many, many other topics.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I will welcome you back with open arms.
Great.
I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far. And of course, you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.